Today, I'm showing you 10 military aviation movies that put real aircraft in the sky. 17 bombers, F-14 Tomcats, and Black Hawk helicopters flying for the camera. Back in the 50s, Strategic Air Command dropped audiences straight into the jet age. There's no models here, just actual B-36 Peacemakers and Boeing B-47 Stratojets filling the frame. Paramount got serious help from the Air Force, who gave them full access to bases and bombers as part of a PR push for America's new nuclear might. The result? Technicolor flight footage that was so sharp and so dramatic, even Cold War military strategists started borrowing it for recruitment reels. The star was James Stewart, and if he looks comfortable at the controls, there's a reason. Stewart was a real World War II bomber pilot, flew 20 combat missions, and still served as a reserve colonel when he shot the film. Every time you see a perfectly executed landing or a heavy bomber wheeling through the clouds, there's a good chance Stewart is actually flying it. The realism is everywhere. Procedures, steady hands, no drama for the sake of drama. The film even staged a real emergency landing with a B-36, putting all that risk and suspense right on the runway. Black Hawk Down is a whole new level of authenticity, thanks to Ridley Scott's choice to use real military helicopters throughout. The U.S. Army signed on, brought in Sikorsky UH-60 Blackhawks and MH-6 Little Birds, and let the crew shoot on active bases and in Morocco. When it came time to show the Black Hawks going down, the team actually dropped decommissioned choppers from cranes to get the impact right. It paid off. You're right there in the chaos, feeling every jolt. Scott even rigged up early helmet cams and gun barrel cameras to get inside the action, years before GoPros were a thing. This movie didn't fake a thing, and you can feel it in every frame. But the push for realism didn't always sit well. The real soldiers, including Delta operator Paul Howe, saw the finished film and called it sanitized. They hated the superhero treatment. Plus, things got risky on set, real helicopters crashed, crew got injured, and the tension was constant. Ewan McGregor's character only got his name changed because the real guy's wife threatened to sue. The Blue Max is all about World War I dogfights, before CGI, before even surviving planes. So the filmmakers did it the hard way. They built new ones. Full-scale flying replicas of German Pfalz D3s, Fokker D7s, British SE-5As, every single one hand-built, then flown by some of the world's best stunt pilots. Some of those shots are legendary for tragic reasons. The scene with Pfalz flying under a bridge was real and dangerous enough that one pilot died during filming. 2 stunt pilots lost their lives making this movie, and flight rules had to be rewritten right in the middle of production. Add in constant weather delays in Ireland, and the budget nearly tanked Fox's entire European operation. For all that chaos, the aerial photography left a legacy. George Lucas later pointed to the Blue Max as the key inspiration for the Star Wars Death Star dogfights. The flying scenes still hold up because they're real. Every twist, every stall, every close call actually happened. There's no getting around it. Top Gun is the reason people care about jets in movies. Tom Cruise flew with real Navy pilots and real F-14 Tomcats launching off the USS Enterprise. Paramount had to pay $7,800 an hour just to keep those planes in the air. The flying scenes were so legit that some pilots actually blacked out from the G-forces while the cameras rolled. After Top Gun premiered, F-14 pilots became minor celebrities. As one Navy pilot recalled, after the movie came out, whenever we flew to new bases around the country, we were treated like rock stars. The Navy loved it. Recruiting shot up 500%, and suddenly everyone wanted to be Maverick. The realism in the dogfights and carrier launches made it a classic, not just another action movie. The Navy didn't make it easy either. Early drafts were too reckless. The Pentagon only signed off after the script got toned down, and the volleyball scene, by the way, was pure studio meddling. Tony Scott shot it like a Calvin Klein commercial because the producers said, "Give us something for the ladies." This time it was Boeing FA-18 Super Hornets, not Tomcats, with real Navy pilots flying the cast through every high G turn. The Final Countdown is the kind of aviation movie that doesn't just stick modern jets in front of the camera and call it a day. This thing actually landed the USS Nimitz, real, not a model, loaded it up with F-14 Tomcats, A-7 Corsairs, SH-3 Sea King helicopters, and shot the whole movie at sea. They even used real Navy air crews and combat cameramen. If you're into planes, it's the only movie that's ever managed to show off what a full air wing looks like at work on a carrier deck in the 1980s. Everything about this movie is authentic, right down to the Japanese Zero fighters intercepting Tomcats. There weren't any airworthy Zeros left by 1980, so the crew took T-6 Texan trainers and gave them the full paint job to pass for dogfighters. The big set piece is two F-14 dogfighting against those Zeros. One of those moments where you really see the gulf between 1940s and 1980s technology play out in front of your eyes. The Navy didn't just hand over the carrier and jets, they actually had worries about how the story would make them look. The producer, Kirk Douglas's son Peter, had to promise scenes of the crew as model patriots just to get full cooperation. Filming came with its own drama too. The cast and crew rode out a real-life storm that scrambled continuity, but the footage was so good, they left it in. And yet all of it came together, with the final film ending up as one of the most expensive independent productions of its day, all for the sake of getting those shots. For anyone who wants to know what a real World War II air battle looked like, Battle of Britain is about as close as you're going to get without a time machine. The producers pulled off the impossible. They wrangled over 100 genuine World War II planes, scouring museums and private collections, and even convinced the Spanish Air Force to loan out their still operational Messerschmitts and Heinkel bombers. The Messerschmitts in the film are actually Spanish fighters. Same look, but if you listen closely, you hear Rolls-Royce Merlin engines instead of Daimlers. Nobody really complains though, the spectacle is unmatched. The director, Guy Hamilton, threw those planes into the air with real pilots flying them. They blew up a real World War II hangar just for a single shot. At one point, some planes went missing in the English countryside, and one even crash-landed in a farmer's field. All the planes still had Nazi markings for accuracy, so they scared the hell out of the locals who thought the Germans were back. The aerial filming was so dangerous that legendary cinematographer Freddie Young refused to go up again after a near miss. Tora is the definition of obsessive historical detail. The filmmakers had no airworthy Japanese fighters, so they took Royal Canadian Air Force trainers and BT-13 Valiants, rebuilt and repainted them into the full squadron of Zeros, torpedo bombers, and dive bombers you see attacking Pearl Harbor. They did it for real, with real pilots flying actual formation attacks. To pull it off, the production also brought in 5 genuine B-17 Flying Fortresses, used P-40 Warhawks, and PBY Catalinas. They even shot the Japanese fleet scenes with World War II destroyers and carriers still in service in Japan at the time. The movie is full of wild production stories. A replica Zero crashed and exploded near the extras, and instead of scrapping the footage, they used it in the film for realism. On the U.S. side, a stunt plane went into the lagoon at Pearl Harbor and sank. The pilot survived. All this trouble nearly killed the film, but the end result is still used in Japanese military academies today for its accuracy. When it comes to recreating the real-life world of bomber crews, Memphis Belle is as close as Hollywood ever got. The producers didn't fake it with miniatures. The U.S. Air Force brought in what few B-17s were still flying, and the Luftwaffe planes were built from scratch because none survived in working order. They gathered 5 flying B-17s, painted and modded them to look just like the Memphis Belle and her squadron, then shot real formation flights over England. The scenes you see in the movie are the closest thing to an authentic B-17 raid you're ever going to get on film. Everything in the cockpit and on the ground used real B-17. The sound, the heat, the way the engines drown out everything else, it's all exactly what those crews lived through. At one point, a B-17 caught fire in the air and had to make an emergency landing. Matthew Modine talked about how the noise was so intense during shooting that you couldn't hear direction over the radio. Catch-22 is The Outlier, an anti-war satire that actually put 18 B-25 bombers back in the sky at the same time. Mike Nichols insisted on realism, so the production built a temporary airfield in Mexico, brought in those bombers and a crew of ex-Army Air Corps mechanics, and started staging formation flights that looked like a real World War II base come back to life. The logistics were insane. It cost $250,000 a day just to keep the B-25s flying, and every shot had to be planned with pilots who'd flown these missions for real. There's a scene where 17 bombers taxi out and take off one after another, a shot that would be impossible to fake even now.